Shabbat Shalom, L'chaim, L'chaim. I saw a video this past week of a Charedi man who's being paraded around on a horse. And they were all running behind him and chanting, Kacha yaseh le'ish asher melech chafetz bikaro, which is a reference to the Purim story where Mordechai is being paraded around on the horse. And it literally means this is what the king will do to the man he wants to honor. And the situation with this man was that he was clearly at a protesting against the Charedi draft, and he was arrested. And now he's being released, and so they were parading him around like he was some kind of hero. And to me, this is actually an example of using God's name in vain, because you don't use religious reasoning to justify your own personal agenda. They're saying that Hashem wants to honor this man because he's gone against the government. And in my opinion, a true lamdan, a true, Torah observant, God-fearing man is sitting in yeshiva while these people are out protesting. Now, there are thousands of Charedi men who are working and learning and volunteering and running organizations like Zaka and Yad Eliezer, and they're doing it b'tzniut and they don't have time to go and waste on these protests. You wouldn't catch them provoking any kind of chilul Hashem or boasting about dodging the draft. The perfect place for our personal negativity to hide is under the cloak of moral superiority. And this is one of the interpretations of not using God's name in vain. Don't use his name or his religion or his Yiddishkeit to justify your own personal agenda. And I feel like that's what these men are doing. Now, on the other hand, there is something else that was going on this week, something I saw, which is that this month is actually Pride Month. And down by the Dead Sea, they're having a Pride Festival. It's a 4-day festival celebrating homosexuality in the LGBTQ community. And it's funny because, it's not funny. It's ironic because it actually happens to be the location of Sodom and Gomorrah by many opinions, the Dead Sea. And it's sad because at this biblical site, Hashem destroyed a whole society due to their immorality. A person could look at this and he could think, have we learned nothing? It's a very condemning look for the people that are hosting this event to specifically do it in this location. It's sad. And my natural reaction to both of these events is disappointment and anger. But Rashi clearly describes what happens when we get angry. We come to make a mistake. He describes it by Moshe when he hits the rock, and many other occasions when Moshe gets angry, he forgets halacha and he makes mistakes. Anger at these other groups will only cause us to err. And these stories we consistently hear on the news, they can provoke the worst out of our instincts. So what is the right response? I believe we actually have to look at what Avram Avinu did when he was dealing with this very event, this very situation. God himself had condemned Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction because of their sins and their bad ways. This was not an article that Avram read or had an opinion on. This was a decree from heaven. It was going to happen. And the first thing he did was not point fingers to isolate them. The first thing he did was daven for them. He went straight to Hashem and he petitioned on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he said to Hashem, if there are 50 righteous people in these places, in this city, will you save them? And Hashem said, yes, I'll save them. And he said, what if there are 40 righteous people? And Hashem said, yes, I'll save them if there are 40. And he kept going. He said, what if there's 30, 20, 10? And Hashem eventually said, yes, if there are 10 righteous people there, then I'll save it. Avram couldn't find 10 righteous people. And ultimately, we all know the ending to the story. These people were doing the wrong thing, not in his opinion, in God's opinion. Regardless, he stood between the Jewish people and Hashem. And he said, these are my people. And he petitioned for them. And he begged to save them. So why did Avram defend these two nations, Sodom and Gomorrah? Why would Avram look at God's decision and defend them as opposed to being on God's team, so to speak? It's because if you knew that your brother or your sister's house was being sentenced to destruction by God himself, you would go straight to God and resolve it there. You would do anything that you could in order to help them. Why? Because when family is struggling, you don't mock them, you don't abandon them, and you don't celebrate their downfall. You go straight to Hashem and you say, these are my brothers. Save them, guide them, protect them. There are many, many condemning stories that we read about in Israeli news channels and all different sects. And it's designed to foster resentment between us. From the settlers to the secular and everything in between, it just depends what channel you watch. In moments like these, when the headlines try to pull us apart and convince us to resent one another, we must remember Avram Avinu, standing before Hashem on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't ask who was right or who was wrong. He didn't divide people into camps. He simply said, "These are my people." If Avram could pray for a society that Hashem himself condemned, then surely we can pray for our own brothers and sisters. The Torah is teaching us that the holiest response to chaos around us is not anger, it's not superiority, and it's not condemnation. It's tefillah, it's achdus, and it's the courage to seek the righteous spark within every Jew. This is how we protect our nation. That is how we bring Geula closer. We owe every single Jew that loyalty, that love, and that protection. Shabbat Shalom.